Good morning. Welcome to the First Universalist Church of Rochester, where we are called to nurture the Spirit and serve the community. I am Peter House, your summer minister, and leading worship with us today are Bill Schubmel, he, him, our worship associate, Nancy Greer. He's our worship associate. The page changed right then. Nancy Greer, she, her with our music. Charlie Kortzel, he, him with tech support. Karen Lebreco, she, her as our grusher. I love the term grusher. And our online coffee hour. And Carol Williams, she, her, and Lily Thatcher, she, her, providing childcare. I think I got to everyone. Our summer services have shifted to 10 o'clock a.m., and if you would like to find a way to support our summer services, please sign up to host the coffee hour on one of the Sundays. It is such an important ministry to support this welcome in the summertime. See your order of service for instructions. If you are here for the first time this Sunday morning, we especially welcome you. Thank you for making it to this worshiping community. We have a visitors forum that can be found in the chat for our folks online and can be accessed by scanning a QR code in your pews or on the back of your order of service. Please fill out the form so that we may offer you a welcome beyond this worship service. Before we take a moment to turn to our neighbor, let us all take a moment to turn towards the camera and greet our online worshiping community. Please offer a wave. And if you are online, please pop into the chat to offer a greeting. To our online community, please wait to share joys and sorrows until later in the service so that they'll be visible to those of us here in the sanctuary. If you are here at First Universalist, let's now take a moment to turn to our neighbor this morning and offer a warm greeting. A warm greeting. Warm time of greeting people. Let us prepare to sing together hymn number 21, For the Beauty of the Earth. How's that?
Good morning. When I heard that the April 8th eclipse was the theme for today's service, I thought of how my experience was so different from the unhoused people I see every Thursday when I do outreach with the homeless outreach team. This work has opened my eyes to the reality of people living in tents, underpasses, including the bridges on Route 104 within a mile of my home, and of course, those who have been sheltering in our church's alcoves. The total eclipse on April 8th was kind of disappointing, but my wife and I enjoyed our hike into Durand-Eastman Park, where we sat in a meadow for about an hour with only one other couple in sight. It was quiet, and the cloud formations were fascinating. Of course, we didn't witness an eclipse, but we did experience the quite dramatic darkness, temperature drop, and then return to light all within a few minutes. If not for the, quote, eclipse, we probably would have just kept to our normal routines. So we had several moments of mindfulness and detachment from world events, and we were so grateful. I'm guessing that for many of the unhoused people, April 8th was just another day to survive. Searching for shelter, food, clothing, medical care, and for those struggling with addiction, trying to obtain their next drink or drug. I mention the unhoused out of concern for them and also being grateful for the many privileges which I often take for granted. Which brings me to the photo. There, the photo. And serendipity. On a family trip to the Grand Canyon, first time in 2012, we had no idea that an annular or partial eclipse would be visible there, and we only had one day at the North Rim, and that was May 20th, the day of the eclipse. We were treated to the beautiful light filling the wide canyon, as you can see in the photo, and we avoided the crowds who came by the busloads to the South Rim, which made it kind of nice. It was a magical trip, but mostly because of the shared experience. Come, let us worship together. As Dwight Montague lights our chalice at First Universalist Church, and you light a chalice in your own homes, will you join me in saying our chalice words in unison? May we be a people of welcome, here to grow in heart and mind and spirit, and may we reach out to serve our community. We're having trouble with the chalice, so it's not Dwight's fault. Please rise in body or spirit and join me in our affirmation of faith, followed by our sung offering. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the source and meaning of life. Thus do we covenant with each other and with all. Today's special offering is for 490 Farmers of Rochester. 490 Farmers was founded in the fall of 2017 as a grassroots crew of neighbors and friends to create a community garden on a vacant lot beside Route 490 in southeast Rochester. Since then, they have grown to offer 55 plots for rent, a children's garden, a free food forest complete with fruit trees, berry bushes, and numerous perennial vegetables, community composting area, rain catchment setup, and gathering space. They host regular gardening workshops throughout the season, as well as weekly volunteer days and mutual aid events. Their children's garden and composting bins are open to the public, and their garden plots serve local individuals and families seeking growing space and a way to connect with their community. Please donate generously to this grassroots organization. This morning's offering will now be gratefully received. You who are here in person are invited to drop an offering in the offering basket, and if you are a visitor, please feel free to let the basket pass. You are invited to give online by scanning the QR code on the back of your order of service. For folks online, please click the link in the chat to give to First Universalist Church. Thank you for your generosity. So at this point, I'm inviting all the children down. But we'll go with the young at heart. And I know that the stories are always relevant. Oh, can't hear me? How about now? Little louder. How's that? Yay. Okay, Saturday by Oj Mora. This morning, Ava and her mother were all smiles. It was Saturday because Ava's mother worked Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Saturday was the day they cherished. On Saturdays, they zipped to the library for weekly story time. On Saturdays, they lounged in salon chairs and got new hairdos. On Saturdays, they picnicked in the grass for a peaceful afternoon at the park. And on this Saturday, they would also ride the bus across town for a one-night-only puppet show. The day would be special. The day would be splendid. The day was Saturday. Ava and her mother could hardly wait. So, zoom, off they went. But when they reached the library, story time was canceled. Oh no, cried Ava. It's canceled? Wailed Ava's mother. They paused, closed their eyes, and let out a deep breath. Don't worry, Ava, her mother reassured her. Today will be special. Today will be splendid. Today is Saturday. So, zoom, off they went. But as they left the salon, whoosh, their hairdos were ruined. Oh no, Ava sobbed. Our dues, boo-hooed Ava's mother. They paused, closed their eyes, and let out a deep breath. Don't worry, Ava, her mother reassured her. Today will be special. Today will be splendid. Today is Saturday. So, zoom, off they went. But their peaceful afternoon at the park was loud. Oh no, Ava groaned. What did you say? It's too noisy, yelled her mother. They paused, closed their eyes, and let out a deep breath. Don't worry, Ava, her mother reassured her. Today will be special. Today will be splendid. Today will be ruined if we miss that bus. So zoom to the extra special one-night-only puppet show they went. We made it, Ava exclaimed as they arrived at the theater. Thank goodness, Ava's mother sighed in relief. Hooray for Saturday, they cheered. Tickets? Chirped the lady at the door. Ava's mother reached into her purse, but the tickets weren't there. Oh no, Ava's mother gasped. I left our tickets on the table. As Ava watched, her mother crumpled. I've had it, she sighed. Story time was canceled. Our hair was ruined. The park was loud. And now we're missing the puppet show. I'm sorry, Ava. We look forward to this all week. And I've messed up everything. I ruined Saturday. Ava was quiet for a moment. Then she closed her eyes and let out a deep breath. Don't worry, Mommy, Ava reassured her. Today was special. Today was splendid. Saturdays are wonderful. because I spend them with you. So slowly, hand in hand, off they went. When they reached their apartment door, Ava turned to her mother. She had an idea. What if we, Ava started. You know, we could, her mother began. So they did. What a beautiful day. And I'm just going to mention the dedication at the end, because I agree with it. To my mom and to all the spectacular adventures we've shared. How will you say her name? Oj. The end.
I invite you now into this reverent time of sharing the joys and sorrows of our gathered community. If you would like to, you can place your hand over your heart to be able to listen from this heart-centered place. As Bill places stones into a bowl, I will read aloud the joys and sorrows of our gathered community. All online are also invited to share your joys and your sorrows in the chat. From Bill Schumbill, a joy, marching with members of our church in the Pride Parade. From Greg and Lois Baum, very disappointed in the New York Times article today with biased, one-sided, inaccurate article about the Asia Sanctuary. The article is full of lies. Shame on NYT. That is a sorrow. From Kitty Forbush, a joy, absolute joy to walk in the Pride Parade with the First Unitarian and the Canandaigua churches. And from our online community, one just kind of went away. I don't know if I was just about to read it, and I don't know if it can come back. A joy, tomorrow I am hosting an overnight visitor. Maddie, I cannot see the name with the reflection. Maddie is a UU minister and musician and author of the closing words that we say each Sunday. Maddie is traveling from California to visit her sister in Massachusetts. Melissa Parrish to everyone. Joy that my son and I are recovering from our first bout with COVID. Blessed to be in recovery. From Donna's iPhone to everyone. A joy, we have adopted a dog, Donna and Tom. There's nothing more joyful than adopting a dog, in my experience. From Martha to everyone, happy birthday, Elizabeth Osta. This morning, we hold that and understand that this church is worshiping and meeting at a time of war. We acknowledge the wars and conflicts that are happening in Israel, in Palestine, Ukraine, the Congo, and Sudan. We acknowledge that there are more conflicts and more wars happening that we may not even be aware of. We earnestly pray for these wars to stop. We light a white candle to acknowledge the grief that we feel in this sanctuary every Sunday and wherever we are worshiping from. Let us be connected by our grief. And we light a yellow candle to acknowledge the joy, the resilience, the tenacity found in life that still makes life worth living. Let us be connected by the joy to those living through the direct impact and loss while at war in their homes, backyards, and country. We will hold a brief moment of silence to honor the many deaths that have happened this week due to wars across the world. And we drop one final stone in the bowl to represent all the joys and sorrows left unspoken in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts. May all be held in the heart of love. I invite you now to join with me in a spirit of prayer and meditation. Let every moment be a prayer. With every sip of tea, let your lips move in thanksgiving. Be fully present to every stroke of the hairbrush, every cup of drink you pour for your children. Be present without judgment or regret, without plans or expectations or even dreams. If we live in this way, every moment becomes a prayer. Amen. Blessed be. May it be so. And in the spirit of contemplation, I invite everyone now to join together singing our hymn of contemplation, number 123, Spirit of Life. So this summer, it seems that my sermons have been replete with family stories. Maybe it's my age. It may also be a sign of my age that lately, as I'm having more and more trouble sleeping, I have taken to watching an episode of The Golden Girls most nights at bedtime, just like my mother used to do. So I think because I've got The Golden Girls in my head, I feel compelled to begin my story with Picture It. Auburn, New York, May 1985. It was my nephew Stephen's first birthday. My sister Catherine had found herself quickly and unexpectedly in the role of mother and spouse at a very young age. But she was determined to do the very, very best job that she could. And she threw herself completely and totally and enthusiastically into the role of being Stephen's mother. In those days, before the internet, magazines like McCall's, Family Circle, Better Homes and Gardens, and Ladies' Home Journal were playing a big, probably outsized role in shaping young women's attitudes and expectations about just exactly what being a good mother entailed. And as Catherine was the very first mother in our generation of the family, several aunts and older cousins, and particularly her mother-in-law, saw to it that she was well stocked with these encyclopedias of motherhood by passing their gently used copies on to her. I recall that she had stacks and stacks of them, all dutifully separated and arranged by title and also arranged by publication date in large wicker baskets next to the artificial fireplace that she had in the dining room. And she was just as dutiful about reading them and trying to make her life reflect what she saw in the pages. She made a set of Christmas tree ornaments that were drums where you took a section of a roll of toilet paper, put felt around it, and then put glitter on it, and then put a little a string of yarn through it to hang it from the tree. She made, remember these? She made a Santa Claus out of a folded Reader's Digest, which she then spray painted red and put a styrofoam head on with the googly eyes and some cotton balls for a beard. She made place cards for the Thanksgiving table that looked like little pilgrim hats. She spray painted mason jars orange so that they looked like pumpkins and then put a little acorn glue on top of it to look like the stem. Easter time, she had an Easter tree where she got out her artificial Christmas tree again, and she hung those plastic Easter eggs and shellacked marshmallow peeps. I'm not sure where that idea came from. And on the 4th of July, she made an American flag cake. The frosting was Cool Whip, and then you used rows of fresh strawberries for the red stripes, and then it had a little patch of blue, a little square of blueberries up at the top to simulate the patch of stars. She tried her best to be exactly who the editors of Family Circle told her that she needed to be. An organized, thrifty, content, and creative homebody who needed to look no further than the aisles of Michael's or Joann Fabrics to find utter and complete bliss and fulfillment. So naturally, it was to the pages of McCall's and Parents magazine that she turned when she was planning Stephen's first birthday party. Every aspect of this event was planned and designed and arranged and coordinated. There was a theme, Disney, an official color scheme, and even an itinerary. We all received detailed instructions ahead of time about exactly how the party was going to proceed, how to dress, till we looked right in the pictures, of course, and exactly what gifts to buy. She had generated a list of gifts, and then she coordinated with everyone in the family and in her husband's family as well to make sure that Stephen got everything on the list with no duplications. Nobody minded any of this at all, by the way. We've all probably had this experience in our family, but he was the very first, and there was never, ever a more beloved baby than Stephen. He was the first grandchild on both sides of the family, and we were all more than eager to make this party the success that my sister wanted it to be. And we were all impressed, I'm still impressed when I think back on it, that a 19-year-old mother on a newlywed's budget invested so much care and energy in a party that her son was not even going to remember when he was grown up. So as I had said, the official theme for the day was Disney characters. The cake was decorated to look like Mickey Mouse, with 2 Oreo cookies for the big ears, 2 M&Ms for those buttons that are on his red shorts, and then for his shoes, 2 of those marshmallow orange peanuts. I haven't seen them in years, but they were the shoes. It looked exactly like the one in the June 1982 issue of Women's Day, which, by the way, was conveniently left lying on the coffee table in case anyone wanted to make the comparison. There was a list of activities. Some of the children present, there weren't a lot of them, but there were some children present, so she planned a list of activities for them. They did pin the tail on the donkey, and then I hadn't thought of this one in years till I reflected on it, but drop the clothespins in the milk bottle, and a Disney-themed scavenger hunt. For the adults, she planned activities as well. There was a Trivial Pursuit game, also Disney-themed, a spoon and egg roll, and I can't describe it any other way, but I've also seen it played at showers. One of those games where you answer the question before you know what the question is, and then the host reads the question and your mismatched answer together, and you get hilarious effects and everyone laughs. I don't know what that game is called. Before the start of each activity, the appropriate subset of people involved for that activity were instructed to pose for a picture that would go into the official scrapbook. Yes, my sister was an early scrapbooking pioneer. Back in the days before the internet, when discarded wallpaper sample books and a hot glue gun were a scrapbooker's stock in trade. There were pages for Stephen himself, pages for Stephen with mom, Stephen with dad, Stephen with mom and dad, pages for pictures of Stephen with the House family, a page for pictures of Stephen with the Colella family, pictures of Stephen with each grandmother, pictures of Stephen's with any cousins, and on it went. Now, I have to tell you that over the last 30 years, I have performed countless weddings, and I've never, ever seen a better coordinated event, even at the Rochester Club. Everything was going exactly and according to plan. Everything was perfect. Everyone was duly impressed, and Catherine was basking in the glow of all the appreciative comments. I was very proud of her. I was impressed, too. And then it happened. While Catherine was in the kitchen lighting the candle, one of those candles that was shaped like a numeral 1 and arranged so that it looked like Mickey Mouse was holding it in his hand, one of her new sister-in-laws decided to let Stephen open the gift that she had brought for him. Now, the opening of the gifts was supposed to be the highlight of the party, and the camera was supposed to capture the very first tear at the Pinocchio-themed wrapping paper on the very first gift while a carefully posed mom and dad looked on. That picture would then be pasted onto page 17 in the scrapbook under the already glued-in letters, "My Gifts." But instead, Stephen had hastily opened the gift while his parents weren't even in the room. This was in the days before cell phones, so no one captured that never, ever to be repeated moment. It was gone forever. Well, it got worse from there. See, a few other guests who had not really been keeping a close eye on the itinerary and the agenda, they thought, okay, I guess it's time for gifts. So they, in turn, began piling presents on the tray of Stephen's high chair, and his young and enthusiastic aunt helped him tear into package after package, carelessly throwing the paper on the floor, while the onlooking adults smiled and egged him on. Isn't he cute? He was probably on at least the fifth or sixth package when Catherine entered the room with the cake lit, and she was just about to get everyone's attention so that she could start singing Happy Birthday. Now, she handled it really, really well. I understood the look that crossed her face because she's my sister. My mother and my other sister saw the look and understood it too. And we all understood what we were in for later. But I was so proud of her. She continued to operate in consummate host mode. She calmly asked her sister-in-law to clear the high chair tray, and then she politely asked everyone if they could wait to do the rest of the gifts after the cake. She did the cake, everything proceeded, but her demeanor was completely changed. While she maintained a veneer of graciousness, she was distracted and deflated for the rest of the party. She didn't watch Stephen blow out the candle on his cake. She nearly forgot to bring in the ice cream that Women's Day had specifically recommended to go along with this cake. And she had to be convinced by my mother to even pose for a cake-cutting picture to put on page 23 in the scrapbook. It was as if the event was now over for her, and she was just going through the motions because, after all, that is what polite people do when they have 37 guests, including assorted new in-laws, 3 different kinds of cheese balls, and 9 boxes of Townhouse crackers on the dining room table. So we cut the cake. We ate the cake. My mother circulated with a trash bag for everybody to put their Donald Duck paper plates and disposable forks into. And after that, Catherine hastily gave Stephen the rest of his gifts, quickly stuffing the ripped paper into the garbage bag as he did it and saying half-heartedly things like, "This is from Aunt Dorothy. Thank you, Aunt Dorothy." My mother managed to snap a few more pictures to go on to page 23, but there was no more posing, no more arranging, and no more fanfare. My sister was already busy cleaning up when the last few pictures were taken, and her demeanor was clearly kind of checked out. As the guests began to file through the kitchen, she would call, "Good night, thanks for coming," from the sink where she already had her back turned washing the punch bowl. But as I've already said, my mother and my other sister and I knew what was happening, as we all understand and are able to read those signs in our families. And more importantly, we knew what was going to happen. As soon as the last great aunt and uncle said goodnight, complimented Catherine on the magnificent job that she had done, and then been slowly guided down the long set of steps that led to their upstairs apartment by my brother-in-law. Is everyone gone? She finally asked me as she put the punch bowl on the drain board and reached for the dish towel to dry her hands. "Yes," my other sister said, and then we braced ourselves. Catherine ran from the kitchen to the dining room and threw herself on the couch sobbing. "It was all ruined. It was all ruined. I worked so hard. I tried so hard to have a good party, and it was all ruined. It was Stephen's first birthday, my first child's first birthday, a day that I can never get back, and it was ruined. It was totally ruined." So even though we knew better, my sister Joan and I tried our best to assure her that far from having been ruined, the party was a great success, and it was a triumph even. The decorations had been beautiful, the food had been wonderful, the cake had been outstanding, both in the way it looked and the way it tasted. Everyone had a good time. Stephen received many lovely gifts. He behaved well the whole time. Her in-laws had been very impressed. The cake even looked just like the one in the June 1982 issue of Women's Day. But nothing we said helped. Absolutely nothing we said helped. If anything, we made things worse Because what kind of happened was when we would try to give her a compliment or another example of something that had gone well, we'd trigger a fresh thought that brought new torment. "Oh, why? Why did you have to mention the cheese balls?" she would cry. "I had been trying not to think about them. They were supposed to be soft enough that you could dip your cracker right into them. And I didn't put out the cheese knife because they were supposed to be so soft. And then Steve's Aunt Mimi had to ask me for a cheese knife. And by then at least 5 people had broken crackers in their hands." And so it went. It went on like this for at least a good 2 hours. The party, in her mind, had been a disaster. The itinerary had been compromised. The flow had been destroyed. The moment had been ruined. Who needed a scrapbook now? It would only serve to curate and catalog the disintegration of at least 3 months of careful planning and painstaking effort. A monument to failure itself. It might as well be thrown in the dumpster right this very minute and never be thought of again. It will only serve as a painful reminder of what a colossal misery life is. Proof that nothing ever lives up to our expectations. Hard evidence that life is merely an ordeal to be endured. Confirmation that to live is to be disappointed. And while, admittedly, this is an unusually dramatic reaction to what was, after all, a relatively minor snafu, can't we all relate to this on at least some level? Haven't we all worked and planned and hoped and sacrificed only to have something minor and unforeseen rob us of all of our satisfaction and all of our enjoyment? I recall that at the time, I thought my sister's angst was out of proportion with what actually happened, yes. But on a deep level, at the same time, I resonated with her. I understood. I got it. If I am being fully honest, while I think I have always been much better about letting it show to other people than she is, in the privacy of my own soul, I have tortured myself every bit as much as this, maybe even more at times, over things every bit as minor and as inconsequential as this was. When events fail to meet my unrealistically high expectations of them, and especially when I perceive that I have failed to meet my expectations of myself. I lived a bit of this same story the first Christmas that my first partner and I owned our house. Owning my own home had been a lifelong dream of mine. And after several disappointing relationships, I was finally secure in a way that I had never experienced before. All of that joy and excitement was expressed through my approach to that first Christmas in our new house. Everything was going to be perfect, like an episode of The Waltons or Little House on the Prairie. Even though it's something I would never, ever do today, we went out and cut a real Christmas tree. I brought along the camera and I took pictures of my partner Tom cutting the tree and tying it to the top of the car. When we got home, I made hot chocolate and played Christmas CDs while we carefully hung each and every ornament and stood back to see, does that one work? Is that right? I took an entire roll of films worth of pictures that evening alone. I made a list of over 100 people, I think it was like 125 people, and I sent Christmas cards to each and every one. Cards that, by the way, I took a lot of time selecting at the Hallmark store so that they would send just the right message. I made a special trip to the post office. Who knew? I didn't know even until that Christmas that you could get special Christmas stamps at the post office. So I made a trip to the post office and picked out Christmas stamps. I even went to the trouble of having one of those return address stamps made with both of our names on it because I wanted everyone, especially ex-boyfriends, to see that I had arrived. I had a life partner and we had a house. I carefully wrapped all of my gifts that year in a way that I never have before, and I even taught myself that trick of using the scissors to make that ribbed ribbon curl. I hung the Christmas cards that we received in response to ours on ribbons suspended from the top of the archway between our living room and dining room, like I'd always seen people do in TV shows and movies. I worked overtime on the outdoor decorations, even paying an electrician to install an outdoor socket for the dozens of strings of Christmas lights that I hung in the bushes. And I even bought a real wreath to hang on each and every window that was on the front of the house. And then I put a spotlight on them, the way I had always seen classy people do when I was growing up. Now, I took 2 rolls of films of those decorations, and I put many of them in our photo album. We would look back on those at our 25th anniversary party, I was quite sure. Yes, it was going to be the best Christmas ever, and it seemed on track to fulfill all of those expectations until Christmas Eve. This was, after all, going to be my perfect Christmas, the fulfillment of all of my Christmas dreams. And perfect Christmases need to be, well, perfect, right? As wonderful as everything was, there was one very necessary element missing during that year. And that prevented that Christmas from being perfect for me. And that element was snow. Starting with Thanksgiving week, I watched the forecast and I waited for snow. I wanted snow. I longed for snow. I needed snow. Having spent my entire life immersed in American pop culture and having spent my whole life in Central and Western New York, snow was essential to any Christmas worth experiencing. But we didn't get any. I kept watching and waiting and hoping and praying, but it never came. I had pretty much accepted the fact that it wasn't going to happen this year when I got a minute of last-minute hope on the evening of December 23rd. I still remember we were watching Channel 13 News, and some people may remember the late meteorologist Bill Peterson said there was a chance for an inch or so of snow at dinner time on Christmas Eve. It wasn't a sure thing, he said, but it was possible. He did, however, say one other thing that altered our plans for the rest of Christmas Eve. He said that northern Cayuga County and Oswego County would almost certainly get at least a few inches. He didn't see any way they could miss. Well, as it happened, Cayuga County was already part of our plans because that is where Auburn and my family is. Now, Auburn is not in northern Cayuga County, however, and normally we just would take the thruway to get there. But I suddenly thought about it. And I realized that if I was just willing to add about 45 extra minutes to our trip, we could take 104 through Red Creek and then take Route 38 down to my mother's house. Tom was not thrilled about this added travel. Unlike me, I was a teacher, so I'd been off for a few days already, but he had worked that day, and he was tired. But since I was willing to drive, he agreed. So as we crossed Wayne County, I kept looking at the sky for signs of snow. Was the sky darkening? Did that look like a snow cloud coming? Was the wind picking up? Was that snow that I saw lightly dancing in front of the headlights, or was it rain? We got all the way to the intersection of 104 and 38, the point at which we would have to go south and leave behind for good my chance of seeing any snow. And we had not seen any snow. But I still held on to hope because Bill Peterson had assured us that it was a near certainty. What if we found somewhere to park and waited a while? WXXI was outdoing itself with Victorian-era Christmas music that we were listening to as we drove, and the Benjamin Britten Ceremony of Carols was promised in a few minutes. Maybe we could sit in the car, find somewhere to pull off the road, sit in the car, and listen to the Ceremony of Carols while we waited for the snow. Well, if I didn't know it before, I found out even young first love has its limits. And Tom, who had been very, very patient, even I would say indulgent up to this point, finally said a polite but firm no. We have no idea when or even if it's going to snow, he said. And even if it does come, when would you have had enough? Would you want 5 minutes? Would you want 15 minutes? An hour? Would you want to wait until the ground was covered? At what point would you decide that you were satisfied? Now, I was tempted to get angry and push a little bit more to get my own way, when somehow the inherent good sense of what he was saying penetrated all of my illusions of bliss, and I understood that he was right. He was absolutely and completely right. No matter what experience I ended up having, it would never come close to fulfilling my expectations. No real, actually lived experience ever could. I thought for a moment, and I realized that I already had so much more in my life than I ever thought I would have. What, I wondered, what would ever be enough to fulfill my expectations? And more importantly, I thought about this too. Did all of my planning and hoping and working and documenting really bring me the happiness I had always just assumed that it would? Or might it be just as good or maybe even better not to try so hard to have an experience and instead just learn to be with whatever is happening? Now, I'm not going to pretend that this one insight that I had at 27 years old fixed me, but it was a start of a 35-year process of letting go of expectations and just experiencing what I'm experiencing. Now, some of you may be expecting to hear me say that my experiences are now far more better and far more fulfilling and rewarding since I've started to do this, and since I've embraced this way of being and actively sought to cultivate this presence in my soul. But that has not been the case so far. They have just been experiences. That's all they are. And that's all they ever could be. That's all anything ever can be. What has happened, however, is that I don't suffer like I used to. When I don't get everything that I want, or when things don't turn out exactly as I was hoping or experiencing, or thought I was entitled to, or had worked so hard to get. And so my experiences, both the good and the bad, don't take the toll on my spirit that they often did when I was younger. Because I've gotten better at not looking for anything other than what happens on any given day. So I haven't increased my joy as much as I've reduced my angst. And as I get older, that trade-off seems like a pretty good one. I'm sure that all of us here this morning know what I'm talking about. We have all lived long enough and fully enough to have experienced the same arc that I have. I hope that I have sparked in each of you some association, or maybe a couple, that resonates with my message. Now, at this point, I do need to break the rule that I was taught in seminary many years ago and use the word sermon in a sermon. I'm still not sure why you're not supposed to do that, but I realized during the writing of this sermon that I did not choose the most accurate title that I could have, because the eclipse that we had on April 8th didn't really teach me a new lesson. The title is What I Learned from the Eclipse. Instead, it confirmed the wisdom of an old lesson that I've been working on all these years. One that took me from my nephew's first birthday party through my first Christmas in my own home and up to this spring when, as you recall, literally the entire world was focused on Rochester, New York. Remember, we were in the path of totality, a once-in-a-century event. Some projections had 500,000 to 1 million people visiting here, backing up 490 for hours and depleting every single grab-and-go item that every single Wegmans could make. I had friends who were going to come from out of state to spend the night with us so that they could see this eclipse. I dearly, dearly loved these particular friends, and I was very happy at the prospect of a visit. As we all experienced, I think, if you think back, the hype for those few weeks was everywhere. We received several pairs of eclipse glasses as Christmas gifts, and my doctor's office even called the Friday before and canceled the appointment that I had for that day, even though I had made it months and months before, because they feared that the traffic would be too fierce for anyone to brave, and they decided they were going to close. So I was aware of the excitement and the hype and the anticipation, but as I said earlier, I have also lived in this part of New York State for 60 years. So probably like all of us here, I knew not to pin too much hope on an event that required a clear sky in Rochester in April. So the night before our friends were due to arrive, they called and canceled. The expected traffic combined with the chance that it was going to be cloudy made them decide that it wasn't worth the effort. And I felt a little sad that we wouldn't see them, but to be honest with you, I felt more relieved that I wasn't going to have to clean and make up the guest room. I don't even remember how I spent most of that day. So I relived for you in detail something that happened 40 years ago, and I don't even remember most of how I spent that day. I do recall that I went shopping at Abundance, and the traffic situation was more like what I saw at the height of the pandemic shutdown than it was like anything that was predicted in the news. I was literally the only customer in Abundance, and they were relieved to have something to do when I came in. And as we all know, the clouds rolled in just in time to make those several pairs of blackout, or not blackout, but eclipse glasses that we had to make them unnecessary. So about 15 minutes before the time of totality, Michael and I took our folding chairs to the yard of School 35 and we joined some neighbors. At around 3:20 p.m., it suddenly got very dark. It was totally dark for a few minutes, and a hush did kind of come over the group as we watched the streetlights come on very suddenly in the middle of the day. And then, just as suddenly as it got dark, it got light again. We chatted with our neighbors for a few minutes about how interesting those few minutes had been, and then everyone took their chairs and went home. By 5 o'clock, that experience was largely forgotten, and it was just a regular old Monday. All of life is a regular old Monday. No matter what we expect or what we experience, by Tuesday, it's just another day in a long string of days. If we do manage a few moments of joy, it happens precisely when we have no expectations and no agenda. I think I remember relatively little about April 8th because I didn't expect very much to begin with. I didn't have any particular excitement or joy that day, but I didn't have any angst either, the way I would have had I bought into all of that hype and had all of those expectations. As we heard about in our call to worship, in a world where so many people suffer and strive, it's a privilege to even have to grapple with an issue like this. So picture it. Rochester, New York, April 8th, 2024. An ordinary day where it got dark for a few minutes, and then we all got back to our lives. May we all live this week and in the coming weeks in greater appreciation of the ordinary. Now I invite you to join us singing our closing hymn, number 301, Touch the Earth, Reach the Sky. Touch the earth, reach the sky. the sky. Please remain standing as we symbolically extinguish our chalice flame this morning. Let us read together the words printed on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts, with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in until we are together again. Let us now take a moment again to acknowledge our online community. And as we close our service this morning, I invite you to place a hand over your heart. If you are joining us online, I invite you to turn your settings to gallery view and look upon the faces of those here with you. For those of us in the room, take a moment to look around at those here with you today. Let our lives be a prayer that waters dry souls, mends broken hearts, refuses to be terrorized, seeks the world's beauty, and carries us through its storms. And let the people of this church say together, Amen. For those of us present, I would like to invite you to the coffee hour afterwards in the Clara Barton Lounge.